So this is my epoxy resin table that I've made. It's 100% homemade. I made the legs, I milled the log, cut the log tree down. I built the sawmill, which that's in another video if you want to watch it. And I did this. This is my first time doing this, and I know this is not perfect. I think it looks good enough for my dinner table, but like it has like a little small imperfection here, and if you look closely, there's one right there, I think, somewhere. But besides that, I'm pretty satisfied with the table overall. And like I said, I got a little short video here of kind of me putting it together. It's not very good at all. Like I said, I'm not a professional in doing this. This is my very first time doing any epoxy work. And it's not really a how-to video. It's more of a what I did, and you know, maybe some things I could improve on, and hopefully it could help you out in some way. But it was more work than I was hoping, but it I like the way it turned out. A couple things were off the rip that I know I would have done different. I would have milled the log. When I rough cut the log, I would have milled it to 3 inches instead of 2 inches thick. That way, by the time I planed it down, I would have had a little bit thicker slab. This is 1 3/4 inches thick currently. And like I said, I started off with just a little bit over 2 inches, but I'd like to have it just a little bit thicker. And I would have definitely, when I went to pour the epoxy in it for the river pours here, I would have definitely took a little bit more time on making a form a little bit better. I ended up leaking a lot of epoxy out all over the floor, as you'll see in the video. It was really pretty much a terrible disaster. But I got it under control, and it ended up turning out pretty nice. I used liquid glass epoxy. This took about 4.5 gallons, and for the deep pours, and then I went back over it with clear like tabletop epoxy that I got from Home Depot. I got the other one off Amazon. I would say, like I said, I did pretty much everything I could myself. I would say I have about probably $550 in it in material. You know, that's 2 different types of epoxy, paint for the legs, stuff, you know, to help make the form and stuff like that. And no, that's probably about it. A router bit, stuff like that. Nothing too much, and a bunch of, you know, several sanding pads. But that's about all I really have in it. Like I said, this was a tree that I cut down and milled on my sawmill, and legs were scrap metal from an old pipe rack from a truck, and everything else was you know, pretty much, you know, stuff I, you know, collected over the years, and, you know, like welding rods and grinding wheels and stuff. But yeah, besides that, everything else I pretty much did myself, or found it, and besides, you know, buying the epoxy itself. But hope you enjoy it. Thank you. All right, so here's my attempt at a wood router planing jig. I have just a shop table here, and I have welded little angle iron clips down the side and screwed a 4x4 to each side of the table. And then I've made this little track out of just angle iron to where my wood router will scoot back and forth acrossways, and hopefully keep it nice and flat. And this is just an old wood router and a Amazon planing bit. I'm not sure how good it's going to do. We'll find out here in a second. But and I got just a old piece of scrap red oak here that I'm off my sawmill, and didn't want to try anything too good yet to mess it up, just in case it don't really work out. And it's screwed up through the bottom of the table, so we're about to give it a try, see what happens. Wish me luck. So after burning up 2 old routers that I had trying to plane this board down right here, I ended up getting a new router off Amazon. I think it's about double the power of my old one there, even the bigger one. And well, I tell you what a difference it makes. It sure does cut down on some time, and seems to be handling this planer bit I got a lot better. So you see right here, I'm just going through, running it on my little router jig here. I've already done the other side, getting this side here good and flat, and getting it ready to get the epoxy poured on. The new router has been working very well, a lot faster. Getting it boards clean in less than half the time with the old one. And until I broke my bit off, hit a knot. So I got a new bit, and I'm about to go back and add it and see if I can get it done. I think this is going to be the final layout of my table. It's 36.5 inches wide and 6 feet long. I like the way here. I'm gonna fill these cracks with epoxy. Never done it before, so hope it turns out all right. And we'll see what happens. So I got my mold set up here. The base of it, this is just a old piece of like 3/4 plexiglass or Lexan or something like that. Had laid around from something. Got it set up on some 10-inch blocks here. Some custom shimming on that side right here to get a good level, and about to get the wood set up on it and clamp down and go from there. I got my sheet of plexiglass here all cleaned up, and I sprayed it down with some mold release spray. Hopefully that's gonna keep it from wanting to stick to here. I pray that it will, but worst case scenario, this is fairly clear, so it can just stay on the back of the table if I have to. And I'm getting ready to lay the boards out and prepare to start pouring it. This is I just moved it into an old abandoned trailer we got on the property, just trying to keep the dust and everything off of it from back where I was at our workshop. So this is what the table is gonna look like overall. Got it laid out and clamped down. It is, again, about 37 inches across and about 6 foot long. Got it clamped down. I'm gonna put on a thin coat of epoxy around the edges and stuff to seal it up, and then start getting ready to pour the deep pour. Again, this is not a tutorial video. Like, this is my first time doing this. I'll let you know how it turns out, but don't take any tutorials from me right now. So yeah, this is the epoxy I'm using, and I got some of this here little pigment color set. Got it mixed, and I'm just gonna let it sit here for a few minutes to try to let some bubbles come up per some recommendations of other YouTube videos. Then I'll pour it at my table, and we'll see how it goes. Well, to say this is not going quite as good as I hoped would be a pretty big understatement. My mold over here has got more leaks in it than the Titanic. And then, I guess the old saying, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, would have been great for here, but it's going, and I have it tilted leaning down on this end because it was leaking a little bit worse than that end. So hopefully I'll put some quick set all around this end, hopefully get it from leaking, and I'll tilt it back the other direction and address this end. I don't know, it would have I should have done a little bit more preparation work on the mold for sure, but you live and you learn. But I do like the way it's looking so far, the way the epoxy is going in all the cracks. It's really bringing them out. I really like the color of it, and if I can stop it from leaking, I think it's going to look good. It's starting to thicken up pretty good. Most of my leaking has slowed down to just a small drip. So I just keep collecting a little bit here and there in these cups and then just pouring it back across the top. About to mix up another batch and pour across the top. See if we can get it filled back up almost all the way. I got 2 little small scoopers of the pigment color I want in here and get it mixed up. So here's the table about 2 days, full days after I finished pouring the first bit of epoxy I had in. Run out of epoxy because it was leaking everywhere, as we know. So I ordered more. It should be here tomorrow, but it was dry enough now that I could take all my tape and patchwork off from around the edge. And I got some more Flex Seal because the one area that I did put Flex Seal on didn't leak a bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put that all the way around it now to start with before I pour again. But I would say it's about halfway full there. I got another 3 gallons on the way. And hopefully without it leaking so much this time, it will be enough to finish, or at least close enough, because I'm probably gonna end up going back over the top and smoothing it all down level once it's said and done, and then putting some tabletop epoxy or something back over it probably. But so this is where we are now, and hopefully tomorrow, like I said, I'll get some more epoxy, finish pouring it, and then wait a couple more days and it should be ready. Well, I have went around, put a good Flex Seal tape border all the way around it, and finished pouring it all the way to the top. It's over the entire thing now, and so just gonna kind of watch for air bubbles for a little bit and let it dry and then go from there. I think I'm really satisfied with the way it looks, but hopefully it turns out, hardens up, and I can get it off the backing sheet and get it smoothed down and the legs under it. I think it's gonna make a pretty table. So I got the table pulled off the piece of plexiglass, got separated, and it really wasn't that bad. Just kind of took a little wood chisel and stuff and kind of worked my way around the edges and drove some wedges and stuff in it. And it peeled right off for the most part. This is the bottom side of it. It's upside down right now. I'm gonna go through here and run the router back across this and smooth it down, and then flip it over and smooth top down, run the saw down around the edges, get those good and straight where we had some leaks and stuff, and then get ready to start sanding. So I've got the board back on the router jig thing here, and just trying to flatten out the top side of it so that get a little bit of air bubbles out, and a few of, like right here, the epoxy didn't quite fill up. It was a hot spot in the board. Just trying to get that all flattened down, and I'll sand the top and put some kind of clear coat on it. All right, well, I got done running the router over the table, and it's not exactly smooth, but it is very flat now, and I mean, it's pretty smooth. Nothing some sandpaper can't take care of. And what I'm about to do is go through with some really thin epoxy and get some of these little tiny holes. There's one right there. Overall, the epoxy soaked in very good. Most all the cracks are perfectly filled in, but there's a couple little tiny air holes I'm gonna go and fill in with some thin epoxy and come back and sand it. This is the back side of the table. I have sanded it down just pretty, or the bottom side of the table I should say. Sanded it down pretty coarsely with 80 grit, just because it's the bottom. I just want to sort of do a trial here, and I'm gonna go back over it with a very thin coat of epoxy, clear epoxy, and see what it looks like. I got the legs set up where they need to go on the table. I went around and started kind of pre-drilling to mark my holes here. I'll move the legs off the top of the table, and then I will drill a hole out to the proper size, and I'm gonna end up putting these little threaded inserts in here, which take a 1/4 20 bolt, and I'll have 12 of them going around the table, and hopefully that will hold it down pretty good. My holes here are going to be a little bit big to compensate for letting the table expand and contract if it needs to, you know, compared to the steel. That way, hopefully it won't warp up or anything in the middle. So I'll get this drilled out, get the inserts in, and flip it over, and we're going to start finishing the top. Well, so after putting on the last coat of clear coat, it was more just a seal coat I put on there real thin. Just sanding it down one more time, getting everything perfectly smooth. Now everything's sealed in. You can kind of see right here when you're sanding, you kind of see the hot spots, getting all those sanded off. Then I'll go back on with one more final coat of clear coat, and that should be done.